some superheroes you need to know about. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda, and this is the top 10 newest indie comic superheroes. What superhero story are you most excited about right now? Number 10, Aaron Slaughter. Aaron Slaughter is not quite as new as some of the others on this list, but I really wanted to shout him out and the series he's from, so I'm extending my definition of new for just that purpose. By about a year. He is from a series that I can't quite say the name of here on the YouTubes, so instead we are going to use an acronym. Is that cool with you? It's cool with me. We're going to use the acronym of SIKTC. What can I say? It is a title that has the word killing in it, so there's a hint if you're looking to look it up. And it's about basically monster hunters and the people that they help as they travel around trying to eliminate vicious creatures who prey on innocents. Erica Slaughter is the first monster hunter we are introduced to through the series, and Aaron Slaughter is basically kind of like her adoptive brother. He not only appears in SIKTC, making his first appearance in issue number 3, I believe, of that series, but also now appears in the spin-off title House of Slaughter. SIKTC and Aaron Slaughter are both properties coming from Boom Studios. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us that you love us by clicking that like button? Why not show indie comics that you love them? Because let's be honest, they deserve it. They deserve a thumbs up. Give it to them. Number 9, Gunslinger Spawn. Gunslinger Spawn is a hero who you may think of as old now, considering he first made a very brief first appearance on a cover back in 2002. But this gunslinger that we're talking about here is not the same Gunslinger Spawn as the one that first appeared back in 2002, and later got his origin story shared in 2008. This Gunslinger Spawn is not old Job, but instead Jovi, who is much younger and also is believed to be Mexican in regards to his heritage. His initial appearance was a bit of a mystery, with people simply wondering how Gunslinger Spawn had made his way to the future. But in issue number 3 of the Gunslinger Spawn series, we learned that this Gunslinger Spawn was definitely not who we expected when he left his Spawn form, revealing a completely different face from the one we'd expected when we believed he was Old Job. While there is still much for us to learn about Jovi in regards to his past and his origin, it is implied that Old Job's Hellspawn powers were somehow passed on to him. This version of Gunslinger Spawn first appeared back in Spawn issue 308 in July of 2020. Later in Spawn Universe issue number 1, we would see him featured in a short story at the end of the comic where he had no discernible face, which is what made people assume that he was the original Gunslinger Spawn we were first introduced to back in the early 2000s. Number 8, Ellipses Howell. Ellipses Ellie Howell is one of the main characters from Crossover. Crossover is an ongoing Image Comics series that's currently on hiatus that jumps into the real world, telling the story of a literal crossover that happens between the comic book world and everyday Earth. As heroes and villains jump into the real world, chaos ensues, and it's up to the main characters to find a way out of this mess and back home. Ellipses Howell is one of these main characters. She herself is actually a fictional character, but a seemingly everyday person, despite being fictional. She's also one of the last few people in her story who is considered a true believer when it comes to the world of fiction and superheroes. She dresses up as one and has recently been seen in the comics wielding a sword that allows her to create portals into other worlds. I don't know about you, but I'd say that both her intentions and her ability to wield a badass portal creating sword makes her pretty heroic. Also, Ellie has a really cool name that definitely implies she is the one who has the symbolic thematic power to deal with this problem best. She was named Ellipses because her mom believed ellipses represent the idea of the impossible and the great unknown, and that her daughter would be capable of anything. Ellipses makes her first appearance in Crossover issue number 1, which was released through Image in November of 2020. Number 7, Radiant Black. Radiant Black is now a couple different people, but originally it was Nathan Burnett, who made his first appearance in Radiant Black issue number 1 and adopted the persona of Radiant Black, eventually brainstorming up his superhero name afterwards with his best friend Marshall. Radiant Black is basically like Power Rangers but for adults, and a series that involves a lot more mystery than the Power Rangers premise, which is pretty front-loading when it comes to the lore behind the Power Rangers in terms of their origin, where their powers come from, and why they were entrusted with these powers in the first place. In Radiant Black, many of these questions go unanswered to start, with us being given little hints along the way as to what is really going on with these Radiants and their hosts. Honestly, it's a brilliant series, and one that has not only given us a super cool new hero in Radiant Black, but has also given us a super cool new cast of heroes with the Radiants, and beyond, a super cool new universe to explore with the Massiveverse. Radiant Black issue number 1 was released via Image in February of 2021. Number 6. Berzerker. The character that we initially only know as B is the protagonist of the series Berzerker from Boom Studios. He is an ancient warrior, half god, half mortal, who is fighting to learn the truth of his origins and also to learn how to finally put an end to his life, as he is constantly driven towards bloodshed. He ends up accepting a mission to fight for the United States, participating in crazy, perilous, and deadly battles in exchange for this information on his own life. This series was written by Matt Kindt in collaboration with Keanu Reeves, which was where the hype came from for it, but it seems to have been a series that really delivered on this hype because a lot of people love it. While I have yet to read it myself, I have talked to those who have, and there are quite a few out there who just really love this series. It's definitely one that I need to read. The first issue of Berzerker was released in March of 2021 and featured the mysterious bloodthirsty bee, who we'd later come to know as Berzerker, and it's a property from Boom Studios. Number 5. Twig. Who is Twig? Only the cutest adventuring hero that you will ever meet. He is so endearing, it makes me want to cry. Twig hails from his own self-titled series and begins issue number 1 by starting off on a journey. He has taken up the position that once belonged to his father as the new placeling. What is a placeling exactly? In this magical land, it is a crucial hero who actively saves the world on basically a daily basis, going out and undertaking massive and arduous quests. Twig never really wanted to be a placeling, he wanted to be a chef, but as a result of what suddenly happened to his father, he happens to be really the only one suitable and qualified to take up this position. Twig is just such a sweet character, like kind of a lovable goof, who does his best to live up to the responsibilities passed down to him. Also, the art in this book and the writing will not only make you fall in love with him, but also his best buddy, who resembles a banana slug, Splat, and honestly, the whole world, which kind of has like a dark crystal sort of feel to it. Twig is from Image Comics and made his first appearance in issue number 1 of his own series in May of 2022. Number 4. Rogue Sun. Rogue Sun is one of the newer heroes that we've gotten in the Massiveverse, so yes, there are Radiants and Radiant Black, but they aren't the only heroes in Kyle Higgins' Massiveverse. In the one-shot Supermassive from February 2022, we began to crack the world wide open and were introduced to 2 completely new heroes who existed in the same sort of universe, but not really in the same series, if that makes sense, as Radiant Black. One of them was Rogue Sun. Rogue Sun is actually a legacy hero, and after the death of the original Rogue Sun, Marcus Bell, his son, Dylan Siegel, is called upon to take his father's place. One major problem: Dylan isn't even sure he wants any of this, and he has a more than shaky relationship with his dad, even now knowing and understanding that all this time he was a superhero and hence he may have had some somewhat valid reasons for his absence. And what's more, the powers that he inherits also seem to come with quite a bit of a catch in that regard. He kind of has to live with his dad's ghost in his head. Number 3. Inferno Girl Red. Inferno Girl Red! This is a hero I've been waiting to see come out in the comics for some time, ever since I first saw her appear. Well, Inferno Girl Red has only just had her solo series start to come out, which is limited, with 3 issues existing in book 1 of her series, which I believe implies there will be multiple books to this series. Inferno Girl Red herself first appeared in the Supermassive one-shot in February 2022, just like Rogue Sun. However, we wouldn't get her in her solo series, where we'd get to learn even more about Cassia Costa, the girl behind Inferno Girl Red, until January of 2023, with issue number 1 also coming from Image, where of course all the Massiveverse is published and exists. In solicitation for the first issue, Cassia earns her place on this list as one of our newest ever superheroes from Indie Comics. She is literally described as, and I quote, the newest Image Comics superhero. In the first issue, we learn of how Cassia Costa was mysteriously chosen to become the new Inferno Girl Red after her world was turned upside down in an instant. It feels like we're taking the category of magical girl to a whole nother level and also mixing in some like fabulous future sci-fi stuff with it, which I love because I love both of those categories. Number 2, The Chosen One. Vanish is just such a cool concept for a comic, and the main character is no exception to the amount of awesome involved here. If you love magical stories, this takes that idea and kind of just like turns it on its head. It answers the question of what happens to young heroes after the evil threat has been vanquished. But it takes a darker turn than most typical happy endings. In Vanish, we follow Oliver Harrison, who is that once young hero, the chosen one grown up. In a world now seemingly devoid of magic, he is haunted by the nightmares from his past and plagued by his own inner demons that he desperately tries at all costs to escape, all while seemingly living an otherwise mundane life. However, Oliver isn't just a washed up former hero. He actually still has held on to a good amount of magic and skills from his past, and must use them to take action once more when a potential new threat appears on the horizon after more than about 20 years apiece, I'd say. Oliver's story is like what would happen to Harry in his adult years if he really didn't want to let go of his past glory and then learn that the Justice League was actually all made up of former Death Eaters. Number 1. Phaedra Essex. Detective Phaedra Essex is the main character of the series Black Cloak. She definitely has an extremely interesting backstory beyond even just her present day story as a detective working in the last known city in all of the world, the city of Kyros. The land Phaedra and her story inhabits is kinda like a cyberpunk world meets a fantasy land where magic still exists but is mostly seemingly coveted by the royals of this land, the privileged few. Phaedra herself used to be a royal, or is a royal, but one who has been exiled, so no longer acknowledging that status. The story only has one issue so far, so really she's quite new when it comes to her appearance and what's going on with her. So we don't know that much about her just yet, but what we do know is that she is determined and unafraid of putting herself in dangerous situations, that is for sure. Phaedra made her first appearance in Image Comics in Black Cloak issue number 1 in January 2023. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time, but until then, you stay nerdy YouTube. Bye!